The following is a reading of our story of Atlantis, written down for the Hermetic Brotherhood by W.P. Phelon. After proceeding for some hours, he came upon what had inevitably been an ancient cemetery, as there were at least 400 petrified bodies, together with the ancient idols, etc. There was also a fountain of beautiful, clear spring water, which was found to be excellent. Some of the tools, as well as 2 or 3 skulls. Mr. Leroy brought away with him, and they are now in this city. The appearance of this charnel house, thus lighted up for the first time for hundreds of years, was gruesome in the extreme and well calculated to shake the nerves of the explorer. Mr. Leroy continued his explorations, while hour after hour passed. It was not until after he had traveled a distance of at least 21½ leagues that he thought it time to call a halt and proceed on his return journey. So far as he could see, the distance still to be traversed might be very considerable, with the chances for the cave opening out, as the floor seemed to be well trodden by human feet. He retraced his steps as speedily as possible, and after being underground for upward of 24 hours, found himself once more at the entrance of the cave. Mr. Leroy promised to make further explorations before long. It is expected that a party fully equipped for the exploration of this wonderful cavern of the dead will soon be fitted out under the guidance of the discoverer, and the outcome of the investigations will be awaited with interest. The natives of the locality, as in fact the Indian population in general in Mexico, believe that at some place near the southwestern coast of Mexico there exists a great white city with countless treasure which has never been seen by white men, and the approach to which is so intricate and cleverly concealed that a stranger has never entered its solitary precincts. With all the increasing mass of information on the subject, it seems there should be some effort at collection under guidance of what is known about Atlantis the Mighty, to make a beginning and thus call attention in the direction in the answer to the question why this book is written. Atlantean Memories. Out of the dim past, old memories come to me, from where the light in all its glory seemed to be, as the people worship near the sun's resplendent rays, and lotus-crowned hail with the joy of festival days. Golden lyres, spending forth rich, harmonious strains, sounding the keynote which o'er the world still reigned. High above all, the vestal song enchanting soars, mingling with the ripples on the wave-washed shores. For the temple floats, the bell's melodious chimes, so deep and mellow in that old Atlantean time. Throughout the ages linger these old memories, still and hover around me with no effort of my will. Still in my heart is throbbing with the rhythm of the waves, those slumbering waves which alas became our graves. Again I hear the glad hosannas to the sun rise. Isis in the sanctuary is veiled from human eyes, which read no warning in the sky's celestial hue, nor heard its murmured in the ocean calm and blue, neither listened to the whispering wind so free, telling of the doom fair Atlantis was to see. I am thankful for the gates of memory ope, the great angels weave the sacred threads of hope, and clothe us freshly with its robes of snowy white, while on our altar shines again the mystic light. The radiant star which once o'er Egypt shone glimmers once again a message all its own. Humble though the temple, the melody is there, the bell's sweet chiming breaks upon the silent air. Amid the incense rising from our sacred shrine, old Atlantean glories round our spirits twine. Chapter 2. There is yet a little more of the flotsam and jetsam upon the stormy waves of human unfoldment which is supplemental to our opening chapter, and must be detailed now or put entirely to one side. From two distinct sources we give an account of an old Mexican city that has never been entered by the foot of a white man, and which was known to be in existence long before the Spanish conquest. Mr. Juan Alvarez, who has just returned from an exploring expedition in the southwestern part of the Republic, reports that he has found a city which has never been entered by a white man, and which has evidently been in existence for hundreds of years. Going back before the time of the conquest of the country by the Spaniards, it is an old Aztec city, and the approaches to it are so guarded by nature that it is an impossibility to reach it if the inhabitants do not want a traveler to get in. The city lies in the almost inaccessible mountains in the most extreme southwestern part of the country, and is so far away from civilization that few white men have ever been in the neighborhood. It was by the purest accident that Alvarez became aware that a city was anywhere in the vicinity, and after he found it, all of his endeavors to reach it were in vain on account of the persistent opposition of the natives. He had been traveling over the mountains in search of an outlet to the Pacific Ocean, when he had come to the top of the elevated plateau and crossed to the further edge. He had a magnificent view, and while looking over the country, saw what he took to be houses in a far distant valley. A close inspection with a glass convinced him that what he saw was really a collection of houses, and he at once set about reaching the place to see who lived in that part of the country. After days of hard work climbing over cliffs and mountains, he reached a point from which he obtained a good view of the city and saw that it was regularly laid out in streets and was peopled with a race who knew something about civilization. The houses were of stone and were surrounded by yards in which were growing flowers and shrubs. On all sides were evidences of taste shown by the inhabitants, and it was evident that he had found a city which was not known to the outside world. A careful examination of the country showed him that the city was located within a natural amphitheater and was accessible from one side only. He saw that the only means of access was through a long and narrow defile which led into the mountains from the Pacific coast side, and he started to reach the place where he could find this entrance. He made an outline drawing of the city as it has appeared to him from the distant mountaintop, and this is all he has to show that there is a city within the heart of the mountains, for he was never allowed to reach the spot. From the drawing, it is plain that the city has not less than 4,000 inhabitants. The houses were all of stone and are supplied with doors and windows. In the center was a large building, which was undoubtedly the temple of worship, for on its walls could be seen sculptured designs representing the deity. It was in the shape of the ancient Teocalli, which are to be found in many parts of this country, and the people could be seen passing in and out of during all hours of the day. After 10 days' arduous work, Alvarez found himself at the foot of the mountains on the western slope, and set upon searching for the canyon leading to the city. He had so well marked the lay of the land that he had no difficulty in finding the entrance. but he was met by a band of Indians who refused to let him proceed. They offered him no violence, but insisted that he should return. He told them that he had to come over the mountains and did not know how to find his way back. After a consultation, he was told he would have to remain a while as a prisoner, and 2 runners were sent into the mountains, who returned in a day with orders from someone in authority, and Alvarez was blindfolded and placed on the back of a mule. He traveled in this condition for 3 days, only having the bandage removed from his eyes at night. On the 4th day, he was told to remove his bandage, and when he did so, he found himself on the borders of the Pacific Ocean. The Indians had gone, leaving him with nothing to guide him back to the place where he had seen the city. This city is described in full in Future Rulers of America, and has been visited by persons in the body who have been permitted to do so. We conclude our extracts with a description of another mighty city, the work of the powerful nation whose capital, located on the great island of Atlantis, exercised its power both east and west, of which we are trying to tell. The American archaeologists who went to the recent discovered city in the Sierra Madre Mountains have returned, and tell of another hidden city in 5 Spanish leagues north of the first city. The leaders of the party, C.W. Pantheon of Philadelphia, says that these cities were evidently twin capitals of a wealthy district long before the Aztecs appeared. The 2 cities are connected by underground passages hewn out of solid rock, and it was while exploring one of these passages that the second was discovered. It lies in a deep basin of the mountains, with no exit except the underground tunnel. At least none has been found. To that which we have thus drawn from all accessible sources in the visible, I now desire to add supplemental testimony from the astral records, which I believe to be reliable and worthy of credence. Does not this collated evidence of a similarity in nature and civilization west of the great city, which could not possibly have had commerce with the mother country for centuries, prove conclusively, even to the realistic and scientific mind, a common origin of religious teachings, customs, languages, both oral and written? All the discoveries relative to this subject confirm this conclusion. We are indebted to those who are impelled by an irresistible desire to learn and to know, who in this cause are willing to expatriate themselves, endure danger, and overcome obstructing difficulties, if they may be by some chance guidance, bring again to the light of the day some of the various records which were left when the sun of the manifested spiritual world went down into the shuddering earth. To the Aryan people who listen with a willing heart, there is much that can be given concerning this ancient city. It matters little how science and religion shall accept that which is offered, whether in a scientific way or from the unseen as true in value. Science and religion have never received anything new upon untried lines of thought until they have been forced to the exception. That is why the priests of all ages are so conservative and have withheld so much more than they should, even on their conservative line of thought. It has ever been their rule to hold fast upon that which they had become possessed, content and satisfied without the trouble and exertion of seeking new fields for themselves or admitting the possibility of broadening truth for others. All that has ever been learned to distinguish the savage from the civilization was known to the wise men of Atlantis. whenever there has been upon the earth a sufficient number of Atlanteans at one time to control a nation or to form one by themselves, that nation or epoch has always experienced a most wonderful growth. In the days of the last Egyptian splendor, when it was a school to which the Greeks and Romans restored for infrastructure, was the last time noted in history of such a reappearance in sufficient numbers to admit of a national control. What they did, we have the pyramids, the temple of Karnak, the almighty ruins of the Nile, and the Euphrates in evidence. As soon as the Anglo-Saxon speaking races were sufficiently developed out of savagery, the Atlanteans commenced reappearing, startling the whole world ever and anon with their great strides towards wisdom and knowledge as they slowly paved the way by conquest and discovery for the settlement and reoccupation of that which belonged to them, and for the utilization of all their old resources under new conditions, added strength and experience. In no other way can we account for the wilting and extermination of the red-skinned usurpers, which had neither claim nor strength to maintain title to that into which they had strayed by accident during the temporary absence of the real owners. Much sympathy has been wasted on the red son of the forest. He has but obeyed the law, who cannot dominate the resources of the environment, must yield title to him who can. How much would our vast storehouses of mineral and agricultural wealth have been helped man's unfoldment if they had never been used? The difference between American Indians and the Anglo-Saxon Atlanteans is plain to the dullest intellect. As the city of Atlantis grew, her population was drawn off into colonies which had deep and abiding influence on the whole of the western continent, but especially centering along the belt in which Atlantis itself was located. Between the fading away of the last Egyptian civilization and the concealment of the world's records at that time, there is a mysterious gap which can be accounted for only in one way. When Atlantis was in its prime, there were other units in the world's categories of nations which were not so far advanced. If Atlantis had held on its even tenor of her way, all other nations of the world would have received the light and been uplifted to something near in its own standpoint. But when this chance of development was cut off, they groped in comparative darkness. When this class of people incarnated again in force of numbers, such scenes as the conquest of Rome by the Goths and Vandals, the overrunning of Europe by the Huns, and the eruption of the Tartars, times without number occurred. As they disappeared from the mortal vision, we can but recognize their sameness of purpose, and the most pertinent fact that undone duty made all this trouble for the Atlanteans of the far past. Their comrades and associates, have we learned the lesson that no human being is separate from ourselves?